The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning and Rebecca was already wide awake. She'd been planning this garage sale for almost 2 months now, and today was finally the day. Her husband groaned and pulled the pillow over his head, mumbling something about it being too early for a Saturday. But Rebecca was too excited to care about the early hour. She'd lived in Maple Grove community for 15 years. 15 years of birthday parties, holiday decorations, kids growing up, and stuff accumulating in every corner of the house. The garage had become so packed that they could barely fit one car anymore, let alone two. Boxes of old toys, clothes that didn't fit anyone, kitchen gadgets they'd used once and forgotten about. It was time for all of it to go. Rebecca had done her homework too. She'd spent an entire evening reading through the HOA rules and regulations, all 47 pages of them. It was boring as watching paint dry, but she wanted to make sure she wasn't breaking any rules. She'd found the section about garage sales, and it was pretty straightforward. Residents could hold sales on their property. Sales had to end by 6 in the evening, and you couldn't put signs up on community property. Simple enough. By 6 in the morning, she was outside setting up folding tables in her driveway. The morning air was crisp and cool, and the neighborhood was still quiet except for a few birds chirping in the trees. She'd borrowed extra tables from her sister, and they lined up nicely along the driveway and part of the front lawn. Her husband eventually stumbled out with coffee, still half asleep, and helped her carry out boxes of items. They worked together for about an hour, arranging everything neatly. Rebecca had even made little price tags the night before, color-coded by price range. Green stickers for items under $5, yellow for $5 to $20, and red for anything more expensive. She was particularly proud of her organizational system. Her daughter had rolled her eyes at the color coding, but Rebecca knew it would make checkout easier. By 7:30, everything was ready. Rebecca had a cash box with change, a small table with a chair for herself, and even a thermos of fresh coffee. She'd put up 2 signs at the end of her driveway, handmade poster boards with bright lettering announcing the garage sale. Some of her neighbors were already early risers and out for their morning walks. A few stopped to browse, which made Rebecca feel like all her preparation was worth it. Old Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down was the first real customer. She picked up a set of mixing bowls and a reading lamp, chatting with Rebecca about how her grandson was moving into his first apartment and needed everything. Rebecca gave her a good deal, knocking off a few dollars because Mrs. Chen had always been so kind to her kids when they were younger. More people started showing up around 8. Some were neighbors. Others were people who'd seen her post in the community Facebook group. There was a young couple looking for furniture for their new place, a woman collecting items for a church donation drive, and a man who seemed particularly interested in old vinyl records. Rebecca's husband had a whole collection he'd been meaning to part with for years. The morning was going perfectly. People were friendly, she was making decent money, and the garage was actually starting to look emptier. Rebecca was helping a customer wrap up some glassware and newspaper when she heard the distinctive sound of high heels clicking rapidly on pavement. She looked up to see Linda Carmichael marching toward her driveway. Linda was the HOA president, and everyone in the neighborhood knew her. She was the kind of person who noticed everything. If your trash cans were still out after pickup time, if your lawn was a half-inch too tall, if your holiday decorations went up one day too early. She wore a cream-colored blazer despite it being a casual Saturday morning, and her hair was styled like she was heading to a business meeting. Linda was carrying a clipboard, which was never a good sign. In the 3 years since Linda had become HOA president, that clipboard had become infamous in the neighborhood. If you saw Linda walking around with her clipboard, someone was about to get written up for something. Rebecca straightened up and put on a friendly smile. Maybe Linda was just out for a walk and wanted to browse the sale. Maybe she'd see something she liked. "Good morning, Linda," Rebecca called out cheerfully. Linda didn't return the greeting. She walked straight up to Rebecca with her lips pressed into a thin line, the kind of expression that meant business. She stopped right in front of the table where Rebecca was standing and looked around at the garage sale with obvious disapproval. "I'm going to need you to shut this down immediately," Linda said. Her voice was clipped and cold like she was reading from a script. Rebecca blinked, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "This garage sale," Linda gestured around with her clipboard. "It's in violation of HOA regulations. You need to pack up and shut it down right now." The few customers who were browsing nearby turned to look. Rebecca felt her cheeks getting warm. This was embarrassing, having the HOA president show up and make a scene in front of people. "Linda, I checked the rules," Rebecca said, keeping her voice calm and polite. "I read through the entire HOA handbook. Garage sales are allowed." Linda's expression didn't change. "Not without proper authorization, they're not. You need advance written approval, submitted 30 days before the sale date. You also need signage approval and a payment of the application fee." Rebecca's mind was racing. She'd read those rules just 2 days ago. There was nothing about advance approval or application fees. She was sure of it. "I don't remember seeing any of that in the handbook," Rebecca said carefully. "Could you show me where it says that?" Linda's jaw tightened. "I don't need to show you anything. I'm the HOA president and I'm telling you what the rules are. If you had bothered to contact the board before planning this sale, you would have known." A middle-aged man who'd been looking at tools set down a toolbox and quietly walked away. Another woman browsing through clothes glanced between Rebecca and Linda, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "How much is the application fee?" Rebecca asked, trying to find a solution. $150, Linda said without hesitation. Rebecca's stomach dropped. That was more than she'd probably make from the entire garage sale. And 30 days advance notice? That seemed excessive for just having a sale in your own driveway. "Linda, I really did read the handbook thoroughly," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I don't think those requirements are actually in there." Linda's face flushed red and her voice got louder. "Are you calling me a liar? I'm the president of this HOA, and I know the rules better than anyone. You're in clear violation, and if you don't shut this down right now, I'm calling the police." The word police hung in the air like a threat. More customers were backing away now, not wanting to be part of whatever was happening. Rebecca felt her hands starting to shake. She'd planned this sale so carefully. She'd followed the rules. And now Linda was threatening to call the cops on her for having a garage sale in her own driveway. "You're conducting illegal commercial activity," Linda continued, her voice carrying across the front yard. "You're creating a public nuisance, causing excessive traffic in our residential community, and lowering property values with this yard sale chaos." Rebecca looked around at her neatly organized tables, her color-coded price tags, the few remaining customers who were now definitely leaving. Chaos? This was one of the most organized garage sales she'd ever seen. Linda pulled out her phone and started taking pictures, photos of the tables, the items, the signs at the end of the driveway, even Rebecca herself standing there looking shocked. "What are you doing?" Rebecca asked. "Documenting the violations for the HOA file," Linda said matter-of-factly. "You'll be receiving a formal citation and there will be fines. We'll discuss the amount at the next board meeting." Rebecca felt like she'd been dropped into some kind of alternate reality. This couldn't be happening. She was having a simple garage sale, something people did in neighborhoods all across the country every single weekend, and somehow she was being treated like she'd committed a crime. Linda tapped something on her phone, then held it to her ear. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting," she announced. "The board needs to address this violation immediately." Rebecca just stood there watching as Linda paced back and forth on her driveway, talking into her phone in a hushed voice. The morning had started so perfectly. Now it felt like everything was falling apart, and Rebecca had no idea how to fix it. Rebecca watched Linda pace back and forth while talking on her phone, her heels clicking against the driveway pavement. The few customers who hadn't already left were packing up quickly, clearly not wanting to be involved in whatever drama was unfolding. One woman who'd been holding a lamp for the past 5 minutes quietly set it back on the table and hurried to her car. Linda ended her call and turned back to Rebecca with a satisfied look on her face. "2 board members will be here in 15 minutes. We're going to have an emergency meeting right here to address your violations." An emergency meeting? In my driveway? Rebecca couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Linda, can we please just look at the actual HOA documents together? I'm sure we can clear this up." "There's nothing to clear up," Linda snapped. "You're in violation, period. And frankly, your attitude about this is making things worse. Homeowners who cooperate with the HOA board typically receive more lenient treatment." Rebecca felt her frustration building. She'd been nothing but polite, even though Linda had shown up and essentially chased away all her customers. Her husband had come out to see what was going on, and he stood next to Rebecca looking just as confused as she felt. "Honey, what's happening?" he asked quietly. Linda says we need special permission for garage sales, Rebecca explained. And a fee, and 30 days' notice, her husband frowned. But you read through all the rules. You showed them to me. I know I did, Rebecca said, feeling a bit relieved that she wasn't going crazy. I read every single page. Linda overheard them and let out a short, harsh laugh. Oh, so now both of you are claiming I'm making things up? This is exactly the kind of disrespect I'm talking about. When I became HOA president, I made a commitment to restore order and standards to this community. Too many residents think they can just do whatever they want. A car pulled up to the curb and a woman in her 60s got out. It was Patricia Holmes, one of the board members. She lived on the other side of the neighborhood and had been on the HOA board for about 5 years. She walked up looking concerned. Linda, what's the emergency? Your text said it was urgent. Linda gestured dramatically at Rebecca's garage sale setup. Patricia, look at this. A completely unauthorized commercial operation happening right in our neighborhood. I found her conducting this sale with no approval, no permits, nothing. Patricia looked at the tables of household items, then at Rebecca. Oh, hi, Rebecca. Having a garage sale? Trying to, Rebecca said. But Linda says I need special permission and have to pay a fee. Patricia's eyebrows went up. A fee? I don't remember us voting on any fees for garage sales. Linda's expression tightened. It's part of the community standards enforcement policy. As board members, you should be familiar with all our policies. Well, I've been on this board for 5 years and I don't remember that, Patricia said slowly. When did we vote on this? Before Linda could answer, another car arrived. This time it was Frank Morrison, the third board member. Frank was retired and took his board duties very seriously. He was always the one asking questions during meetings and requesting documentation for everything. What's going on? Frank asked as he approached. Linda, your message said we had a code violation emergency. That's right, Linda said, regaining her authoritative tone. This resident is conducting unauthorized commercial activity. Frank looked at the garage sale, then back at Linda. It looks like a garage sale to me. People have those all the time. Not without following proper procedures, Linda insisted. She pulled out her clipboard and started reading from it. Under Section 7 of the Community Standards Enforcement Policy, all commercial activities require advance written notice of 30 days, board approval, and payment of applicable fees. Section 7? Frank said. Linda, our bylaws don't have a Section 7 on commercial activities. We have rules about home businesses, but garage sales aren't commercial activities. Linda's face was getting redder. Frank, I don't appreciate you contradicting me in front of a resident. We need to present a united front as a board. I'm not contradicting you to be difficult, Frank said, his voice calm but firm. I'm just saying I don't remember these rules. Do you have a copy of what you're reading from? Linda clutched her clipboard closer to her chest. This is my working document. I compile information from various sources to help me enforce community standards effectively. Your working document? Patricia asked. Linda, we're supposed to enforce the actual bylaws, not working documents. The situation was getting more tense by the second. Rebecca stood there watching as the 3 board members essentially started arguing among themselves. Her husband had moved closer to her and she could tell he was getting angry on her behalf. Look, Rebecca tried again. I have a copy of the HOA handbook inside. Can we please just get it and look at what the actual rules say? Linda whirled on her. I don't need to see your copy of anything. I'm the president of this HOA and I know what the rules are. The fact that you continue to argue with me shows a complete lack of respect for community governance. But Linda, Patricia interjected, if she has the handbook, maybe we should look at it. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to remember voting on garage sale fees and I just can't. Me neither, Frank added. And I read through the minutes from every meeting before they're approved. I would have noticed something like that, Linda's voice rose. Are you both questioning my authority? I'm the president. I was elected to lead this community and make decisions that protect property values and maintain standards. Being president doesn't mean you can make up rules, Frank said, and now he sounded irritated too. We have bylaws for a reason. A few of Rebecca's neighbors had come out of their houses drawn by the raised voices. Old Mrs. Chen was standing on her front lawn watching. The Kowalskis from across the street were on their porch. This was turning into a full neighborhood spectacle. Linda seemed to notice the audience too, and it only made her more aggressive. Fine. You want to see violations? Let me list them all. She flipped through pages on her clipboard. Unauthorized garage sale. Unpermitted signage on private property without board approval. Creating a public nuisance. Excessive vehicle traffic on a residential street. Potential safety hazard with items displayed near the roadway. Safety hazard? Rebecca's husband spoke up for the first time. Everything is on our own property, well away from the street. And since when do we need permission for signs on our own property? Rebecca added. People put up birthday signs and holiday decorations all the time. Those are different, Linda said quickly. This is commercial signage. It's a piece of poster board that says garage sale, Rebecca said, her patience finally wearing thin. How is that different from someone putting up a happy birthday sign? Linda ignored the question and turned back to Patricia and Frank. I'm calling for a formal board vote right now. All in favor of issuing a citation for these violations? Linda, we can't vote on something like this, Patricia said. We don't even have a quorum. The bylaws require all 5 board members for official votes. Where are the other 2 board members? Frank asked. They were unavailable, Linda said dismissively. But as president, I can make executive decisions in emergency situations. This isn't an emergency, Frank said flatly, and you don't have executive authority. We're a board, not a dictatorship. Everything requires a vote. Rebecca watched Linda's face cycle through several shades of red. The woman was clearly not used to being challenged, especially not by her own board members. Fine, Linda said through gritted teeth. We'll table the formal citation for now, but Rebecca, consider this your official warning. I'm going to be watching your property very carefully from now on. Any violations, no matter how small, will be documented and brought before the full board. It sounded like a threat, and it basically was. Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. This woman had the power to make her life miserable over the smallest things. And I'll be reviewing the HOA budget reports, Frank said, almost as an aside. I want to see if there are any fees that have been collected that I don't know about. Linda's head snapped toward Frank. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm doing my job as a board member, Frank replied. If there are fees being collected, they should be in our financial records. Transparency is important. Linda grabbed her clipboard and turned on her heel. This meeting is over. Patricia, Frank, I expect you both to remember your duty to support the president's decisions. Rebecca, shut down this sale now or face the consequences. She stalked off toward her car, her heels clicking angrily. Patricia and Frank both turned to Rebecca with apologetic expressions. I'm so sorry about this, Patricia said quietly. I honestly don't know what she's talking about with these fees and approvals. Neither do I, Frank agreed. But I'm going to find out. They left and Rebecca stood there surrounded by her garage sale items, feeling like she'd just survived a hurricane. Her husband put his arm around her shoulders. That was insane, he said. Yeah, Rebecca agreed, her mind racing. Yeah, it really was. But something Linda had said kept echoing in her mind. Something about executive authority and knowing the rules better than anyone. Rebecca had a feeling this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After Linda drove off and the board members left, Rebecca and her husband spent the next hour putting everything away. The garage sale was basically ruined. Word had spread through the neighborhood Facebook group about the confrontation, and no one else came by. Rebecca felt defeated as they carried boxes back into the garage. That evening, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right with her. Linda had been so confident, so aggressive about these rules. But when the other board members questioned her, she'd gotten defensive instead of just showing them the documentation. That seemed odd. Rebecca pulled out her laptop and opened the PDF of the HOA handbook she'd downloaded from the community website. She went through it page by page again, even more carefully this time. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing about advance approval for garage sales, nothing about application fees, nothing about any of the things Linda had claimed. She started searching through her email. When they'd bought the house 15 years ago, they'd received copies of all the HOA documents. She found the old emails and compared them to the current handbook. They were identical. None of the rules Linda mentioned existed in either version. Her husband came into the room carrying 2 cups of tea. Still thinking about it? Something's not right, Rebecca said. Linda was so sure of herself, but these rules she's talking about don't exist anywhere. Maybe she's just confused. He suggested, though he didn't sound convinced. Or maybe she's making them up, Rebecca said quietly. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Patricia, the board member. "Can you call me? Need to talk about something." Rebecca called her back immediately. "Rebecca, hi," Patricia answered. "Listen, I've been thinking about what happened today. Frank and I went through all our HOA documents after we left your house. We can't find any of those rules Linda was citing." "I know," Rebecca said. "I've been going through everything too. They don't exist." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "There's something else." Frank checked our financial records. He found several deposits marked as application fees over the past year and a half, but we never voted to implement any application fees. Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of application fees?" "All sorts. Fees for holiday decoration approval, fees for landscaping changes, fees for exterior paint color approval. We're talking about small amounts, usually between $50 and $200, but they add up." Frank counted almost $3,000 over 18 months. $3,000? Rebecca couldn't believe it. "Where did the money go?" "That's what we're trying to figure out," Patricia said. "The deposits are in the HOA account, but they're not allocated to anything specific. It's just sitting there. And here's the thing. None of these fees are in our bylaws. Linda has been collecting money for rules that don't actually exist." Rebecca's mind was racing. "Patricia, has anyone ever questioned her about this?" "I don't think anyone knew. Linda handles most of the day-to-day stuff. She's very controlling about HOA business. She always says she's just being efficient, taking care of things so the rest of us don't have to worry. But now I'm wondering what else she's been doing without telling the board." They talked for a few more minutes, and Patricia promised to keep Rebecca updated. After hanging up, Rebecca sat there staring at her laptop screen. This was bigger than just a ruined garage sale. Linda had been essentially scamming the neighbors. The next morning, Rebecca was in her home office when she heard a knock at the door. It was Tom Bradley, who lived 3 houses down. She'd known Tom and his wife for years. They'd coached Little League together when their kids were younger. "Hey, Rebecca," Tom said when she opened the door. "I heard about what happened yesterday with Linda. Mind if I come in for a minute?" They sat in the living room, and Tom looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to tell you something. Back in June, I had a garage sale. Did it on a Saturday morning, just like you. Linda showed up and told me the same thing, that I needed advance approval and had to pay a fee." "What did you do?" Rebecca asked. "I paid it," Tom admitted, looking embarrassed. "It was $150. She made it sound like if I didn't pay, I'd get fined even more. Maybe even face legal action from the HOA. I didn't want the hassle, so I just gave her a check." "Tom, those fees aren't real," Rebecca said. "There's nothing in the HOA bylaws about them." His face went red. "Are you serious? I paid $150 for nothing." "I'm afraid so," Rebecca said. "And you're not the only one. Patricia told me Linda's been collecting these fake fees from multiple people." Tom stood up, pacing across the living room. "That's fraud. That's literally fraud. We need to do something about this." "I know," Rebecca agreed, "but I'm not sure what yet." Over the next few hours, 3 more neighbors contacted Rebecca. One had paid a fee for putting up Christmas lights outside the approved December time frame. Another had paid for permission to change their front door color. A third had been charged for planting new flowers in their front yard without landscape approval. None of these fees were in the actual HOA rules. By that afternoon, Rebecca had received messages from 7 different neighbors, all with similar stories. Linda had been running this scheme for at least 2 years, maybe longer. Some people had paid without question, like Tom. Others had argued but eventually given in when Linda threatened them with fines or legal action. Rebecca's husband came home from work and found her at the dining room table, surrounded by printed HOA documents and handwritten notes. "What's all this?" "Evidence," Rebecca said. "Linda's been collecting fake fees from the neighborhood. I've talked to 7 people today who've all paid her for things that aren't actually violations." He whistled low. "That's serious. What are you going to do?" Rebecca looked up at him. "I think it's time I told you something about my job." He looked confused. "Your job? What does that have to do with this?" "Remember how I said I do consulting work for real estate companies?" Rebecca said. "That's true, but it's not the whole story. I'm actually a real estate attorney. I specialize in property law and HOA disputes." Her husband's eyes went wide. "You're a lawyer? Why didn't you tell Linda that yesterday?" "Because I wanted to see how far she'd go," Rebecca admitted. "And honestly, I was in shock. I wasn't thinking clearly. But now that I've had time to process everything, I know exactly what's happening here. Linda's been operating the HOA like her own personal kingdom, making up rules and collecting money that she has no legal authority to collect. Can you do something about it? He asked. I can do a lot about it, Rebecca said. But first I need to gather all the facts. I need to know exactly what she's been doing, how long it's been going on, and who else has been affected. The next morning, Rebecca got another call from Patricia. Rebecca, we're calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night. Frank found more irregularities in the financial records. We need to address this officially. I'll be there, Rebecca said. And Patricia, there's something you should know about me. She explained her background as an attorney. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Oh my, Patricia finally said. Linda has no idea who she picked a fight with, does she? No, Rebecca said. She really doesn't. That afternoon, Rebecca sat down and did what she did best. She built a case. She went through every HOA document with a fine-tooth comb. She documented every conversation she'd had with neighbors about fake fees. She pulled up the county records showing the official HOA bylaws that had been filed. She made copies of everything. She also did something else. She called the county clerk's office and requested copies of all amendments and updates to their HOA governing documents over the past 5 years. What she found was interesting. There had been no amendments filed, none, which meant that any new rules Linda claimed to have implemented were never officially voted on or legally recorded. By evening, Rebecca had a folder that was 3 inches thick. It contained everything anyone would need to see exactly what Linda had been doing: making up rules, collecting unauthorized fees, intimidating residents, and operating outside the authority granted to her by the HOA bylaws. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. It was from Linda. I know you've been talking to board members and spreading lies about me. This constitutes harassment of an HOA officer. I'm documenting everything for legal action. You should stop before you make things worse for yourself. Rebecca read the message twice, then smiled. Linda was threatening her with legal action. Linda, who had been committing what amounted to fraud for 2 years, was threatening to sue her for talking to her neighbors. She typed back a simple response. See you at tomorrow's board meeting. Rebecca set down her phone and looked at the folder of documents on her desk. Tomorrow night was going to be very interesting. Linda thought she was in control, thought she could intimidate people into silence. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd picked a fight with someone who actually knew the law, someone who had spent years handling cases exactly like this. And now it was time for Linda to find out that actions have consequences. Rebecca's husband came into the office and saw her expression. You look like you're planning something. I am, Rebecca said. Tomorrow night Linda's going to get a reality check. A big one. The community center meeting room was more packed than Rebecca had ever seen it. Usually HOA meetings had maybe 10 or 15 people show up. Tonight, there had to be at least 40 residents crammed into the space. Word had spread fast about the emergency meeting, and everyone wanted to see what would happen. Rebecca arrived 15 minutes early with her thick folder of documents tucked under her arm. She dressed professionally, blazer, slacks, the kind of outfit she wore when she had to appear in court. Her husband was with her, and so was Tom from down the street. Several other neighbors who'd paid fake fees were there too. Linda was already at the front table where the board members sat, and she looked annoyed at the crowd size. Patricia and Frank were there, along with the 2 other board members who hadn't been at the garage sale incident, Helen Wu and David Patel. All 5 board members were present, which meant they had a full quorum for official votes. This is quite a turnout, Linda said loudly, trying to sound in control. I hope everyone understands that board meetings are for official business, not social gatherings. This is official business, Frank said firmly. That's why we called the meeting. Linda's expression tightened, but she didn't respond. She shuffled papers in front of her, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Patricia called the meeting to order at 7 o'clock sharp. Thank you everyone for coming. We've called this emergency meeting to address some concerns that have come to the board's attention regarding HOA finances and enforcement procedures. Before we start, Linda interrupted, I'd like to state for the record that I believe this meeting was called under false pretenses. There's no emergency. This is just certain board members trying to undermine my authority as president. Linda, please, Helen said. She was the oldest member of the board and had always been soft-spoken. Let's just hear what Patricia and Frank have found. Frank stood up and cleared his throat. He looked nervous but determined. Over the past 3 days, I've done a thorough review of our HOA financial records. I've found multiple deposits labeled as application fees or approval fees. These fees total just over $3,000 collected over the past 2 years. There were murmurs throughout the room. Several people looked shocked. The problem, Frank continued, is that none of these fees are authorized in our bylaws. I've gone through every page of our governing documents, and there's no provision for charging residence fees for things like garage sales, holiday decorations, landscaping changes, or exterior modifications. That's absurd, Linda said, her voice sharp. Of course there are provisions for fees. How else would we maintain community standards? By following the actual rules in the bylaws, Patricia said. She pulled out her own copy of the HOA handbook. Linda, can you please show us where in this document it authorizes you to collect these fees? Linda's face flushed. I don't need to prove myself to this board. I'm the president. I was elected to enforce community standards, and that's what I've been doing. Being president doesn't give you the authority to create new rules, David spoke up. He'd been quiet until now. We all have to follow the bylaws. That's how HOAs work. I've been doing this for the good of the community, Linda insisted, her voice getting louder. Property values depend on maintaining standards. If we let people do whatever they want, this neighborhood would fall apart. Rebecca had been sitting quietly, but now she stood up. May I say something? Linda's head snapped toward her. This is a board meeting. Residents can speak during the open comment period at the end. Actually, Linda, Patricia said, we can hear from residents at any time if the board agrees. All in favor of hearing from Rebecca? 4 hands went up immediately. Everyone except Linda. The board recognizes you, Rebecca, Patricia said with a small smile. Rebecca walked to the front of the room, carrying her folder. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. Thank you. My name is Rebecca Chen, and I live at 247 Maple Grove Drive. Many of you know me. I've lived here for 15 years, and I've always tried to be a good neighbor and follow the rules. She opened her folder and pulled out the first document. Last Saturday, I held a garage sale. Before doing so, I read through the entire HOA handbook to make sure I was following the rules. According to page 23, section 4, garage sales are permitted on resident property with the only restrictions being time, limits, and no signs on common property. She held up the page so everyone could see the highlighted section. When Linda showed up at my garage sale, she told me I needed advance approval submitted 30 days prior, signage approval, and that I had to pay a $150 application fee. Rebecca pulled out another document. These requirements don't exist anywhere in our governing documents. I know this because I'm a real estate attorney who specializes in HOA law. The room went completely silent. Even Linda's mouth had fallen open slightly. In the past 3 days, Rebecca continued, her voice calm and professional, I've been contacted by 9 different residents who have paid various fees to Linda for supposed violations or approvals. Tom Bradley paid $150 for having a garage sale. Catherine Morrison paid $75 for hanging Christmas lights in November instead of December. The Johnsons paid $200 for changing their front door color. She pulled out more documents, placing them on the table in front of the board members. I have written statements from all 9 residents. I also have copies of checks, receipts, and text messages from Linda demanding these payments. The total amount collected is $3,240. Now wait just a minute, Linda started to say, but Frank held up his hand. Let her finish. Rebecca nodded her thanks. I also contacted the county clerk's office and requested copies of all official amendments to our HOA governing documents filed in the past 5 years. According to county records, there have been 0 amendments filed. 0, which means any new rules Linda claims to have implemented were never officially voted on by the board and never legally recorded with the county. She pulled out the final set of documents. Under state law, HOA boards must follow their own governing documents. Board members can't unilaterally create new rules or fees. Doing so is a breach of fiduciary duty. Collecting money for fake violations could potentially be considered fraud. The word fraud hung in the air like a bomb. People started whispering to each other. Linda had gone pale. That's a serious accusation, Linda said, but her voice shook. I've done everything for this community. I've given my time, my energy, my expertise. And this is how I'm repaid? With accusations and attacks? No one's attacking you, Helen said gently. But Rebecca's right. If we've been collecting fees that aren't in the bylaws, we need to address it. I have all the authority I need as president, Linda insisted, but she sounded desperate now. I was elected to lead this HOA and I've been protecting property values. Linda, Rebecca said, her voice firm but not unkind. Being elected president doesn't give you unlimited power. You're bound by the same bylaws as everyone else. You can't just make up rules because you think they're good ideas. Who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? Linda snapped. You come to one meeting with your fancy legal talk and think you can undermine everything I've built here? I'm not undermining anything, Rebecca said. I'm protecting the rights of the homeowners, which is exactly what the bylaws are designed to do. Frank stood up. I think we need to vote on this. I move that we conduct a full audit of all fees collected over the past 3 years, and that we immediately cease collection of any fees not explicitly authorized in our bylaws. I second that, David said immediately. All in favor? Patricia asked. 4 hands went up. Only Linda stayed down. The motion passes, Patricia said. Linda, I'm sorry, but we also need to discuss your role as president. My role? Linda's voice cracked. You can't remove me. I was elected. Actually, Rebecca said quietly, according to your bylaws, the board can vote to remove an officer with a majority vote if that officer has violated their fiduciary duties or acted outside their authority. Linda stared at Rebecca with pure hatred in her eyes. You've ruined everything. Everything I worked for. You ruined it yourself, Tom called out from the audience. You've been scamming us for 2 years. Other voices joined in, people angry about the fees they'd paid, the threats Linda had made, the way she'd used her position to intimidate and control. Helen stood up looking sad but resolute. Linda, I think it's best if you step down as president. We can do this gracefully or we can take a formal vote. Linda looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Some angry, some disappointed, some just tired of the drama. She grabbed her purse and her papers, her hands shaking. Fine, she spat out. I resign. But this community is going to fall apart without me. You'll see. Property values will drop, standards will decline, and it'll be all your fault. She stormed out of the meeting room, the door slamming behind her. For a moment, no one said anything. Then someone in the back started clapping. Others joined in. And soon the whole room was applauding. Rebecca sat back down next to her husband, suddenly exhausted. Patricia caught her eye from the front table and mouthed, "Thank you." The meeting continued for another hour. The board voted to refund all the unauthorized fees Linda had collected. They voted to send a letter to every resident clarifying the actual rules in the bylaws, and they voted to elect Patricia as the new president. As people filed out afterward, several neighbors stopped to thank Rebecca. Mrs. Chen hugged her. Tom shook her hand enthusiastically. Even people she barely knew came up to express their gratitude. You didn't have to do all that, her husband said as they walked to their car. Yes, I did, Rebecca replied. Linda was bullying people and breaking the rules. Someone had to stop her. Well, he said with a grin, she definitely picked the wrong person to mess with. Rebecca laughed. Yeah, she really did. The week after the board meeting felt almost surreal. Rebecca kept expecting more drama, more confrontation, but instead the neighborhood was peaceful, quieter than it had been in years, actually. Several neighbors told her they felt like they could finally breathe again, without worrying about Linda showing up with her clipboard. Patricia, the new HOA president, called Rebecca 2 days after the meeting. I wanted to update you on everything. We've started processing the refunds for everyone who paid those fake fees. It's going to take a few weeks to get checks out to everyone, but it's happening. That's great news, Rebecca said. How's everyone handling the transition? Better than expected, Patricia admitted. Honestly, I think people are just relieved. We had no idea how much stress Linda was causing until she was gone. I've gotten emails from at least 20 residents thanking us for addressing the situation. What about Linda herself? Rebecca asked. Have you heard from her? Patricia sighed. She sent a long email to the entire board yesterday. It was basically her justifying everything she did and blaming us for not supporting her. She still doesn't seem to understand that she was breaking the rules. Some people never do, Rebecca said. They get so convinced they're right that they can't see anything else. Over the next few days, Rebecca's mailbox and email inbox filled up with thank you messages from neighbors. Some were from people she'd talked to about the fake fees. Others were from residents she barely knew, people who'd felt intimidated by Linda but never said anything. One message particularly stood out. It was from a young couple who'd moved in about 6 months ago. They wrote about how Linda had charged them a $200 new resident processing fee when they first moved in, claiming it was standard for all HOAs. They'd paid it without question because they were first-time homeowners and didn't know any better. They were getting that money back now, and they were incredibly grateful. On Saturday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the garage sale incident, Rebecca decided to try again. She pulled out all the same tables, set up all the same items, and put up her signs at the end of the driveway. Her husband helped her carry everything out, and they were both laughing about the irony of doing this all over again. By 8 o'clock, the driveway was full of customers. Mrs. Chen came back and bought the mixing bowls she'd had to abandon the first time. Tom and his wife stopped by just to show their support and ended up buying a bookshelf. Even Patricia came over during her morning walk and picked up a few items. The best part was how relaxed everything felt. No one was looking over their shoulder waiting for Linda to appear. People were chatting, laughing, browsing through items without any tension in the air. This was what a neighborhood garage sale was supposed to feel like. Around 10 o'clock, Rebecca was helping a customer load a lamp into their car when she noticed someone standing at the edge of her driveway. It was Helen, one of the board members. She looked hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should approach. "Hi, Helen," Rebecca called out warmly. "Come on over." "Looking for anything specific?" Helen walked up slowly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute?" They moved to the side where it was quieter. Helen seemed nervous, twisting her hands together. "The board has been talking," Helen started, "and we'd like to ask if you'd consider joining. We have an open position now that Linda's gone, and we all agree you'd be perfect for it." Rebecca was surprised. She hadn't expected this. Me on the HOA board? "You clearly understand how HOAs are supposed to work," Helen explained. "You know the law, you're fair, and you actually care about protecting homeowners' rights instead of just enforcing rules for the sake of it. We need someone like you." Rebecca thought about it for a moment. Part of her wanted to say no. She'd already spent enough time dealing with HOA drama. But another part of her realized this was an opportunity to make sure what happened with Linda never happened again. "Can I think about it?" Rebecca asked. "Of course," Helen said. "Take your time. The position isn't going anywhere." The garage sale was a huge success. Rebecca made almost $600, cleared out a ton of stuff from her garage, and had a genuinely good time doing it. As she was packing up the last few items that evening, Tom came walking over. "Hey, I heard Helen asked you about joining the board," he said. "Please say you're considering it." "I am," Rebecca admitted. "But I'm not sure. It's a lot of work." "Yeah, but you're good at it," Tom said. "And honestly, after what you did at that meeting, I think everyone in the neighborhood would feel better knowing you're watching over things." That comment stuck with Rebecca. Over the next few days, she got similar messages from other neighbors. People expressing hope that she'd join the board, saying they'd feel more confident about the HOA with her involved. She talked it over with her husband one evening while they were having dinner. "What do you think? Should I do it? Do you want to?" he asked. "Part of me does," Rebecca said. "I mean, I spent all that time studying HOA law, building that case against Linda. It seems like a waste to just walk away now when I could actually help make things better." "Then I think you have your answer," her husband said with a smile. Rebecca called Patricia the next day and accepted the position. Her first board meeting was the following week, and it was completely different from the emergency meeting. There was no drama, no fighting, just 5 people, working together to address neighborhood concerns and follow the actual rules. They spent most of the meeting reviewing the bylaws and making sure everyone understood exactly what they did and didn't have the authority to do. Patricia suggested creating a simple 1-page guide for residents explaining common questions: what required approval, what didn't, and how to request changes if they wanted to do something unusual. "This is what the HOA should have been doing all along," David said, "being helpful instead of just being rule enforcers." "Exactly," Rebecca agreed. "Our job is to maintain the community, not control it." Over the next few months, the change in the neighborhood was remarkable. People actually started attending HOA meetings because they weren't afraid of being yelled at or fined for random things. Residents felt comfortable asking questions without worrying about Linda showing up to document violations. The new board implemented a suggestion box and started actually listening to what homeowners wanted. They organized a neighborhood cleanup day that got huge participation. They even started a community garden on a piece of common property that had just been sitting empty. As for Linda, she kept a low profile for a few months. Rebecca would occasionally see her car in the driveway but never ran into her in person. Then one day a for sale sign appeared on Linda's lawn. "I heard she's moving," Mrs. Chen told Rebecca when they ran into each other at the mailbox. "Someone said she's going to a condo community where she doesn't have to deal with HOA boards." Rebecca couldn't help but find that ironic. Linda was moving somewhere specifically to avoid the kind of oversight she'd spent years avoiding herself. The house sold within a month, and Linda moved out on a Tuesday afternoon. Rebecca happened to be outside watering her flowers when the moving truck pulled away. Linda's car followed behind it, and just for a moment their eyes met. Linda's expression was hard to read, part anger, part something else. Maybe embarrassment, maybe regret. Then she was gone, and that was that. That weekend, Rebecca held another garage sale. This time it was to sell off Linda's position, a joke her husband had made that morning that made them both laugh. No drama, no threats, just a normal suburban garage sale on a beautiful Saturday morning. A young family new to the neighborhood stopped by, and the wife picked up a picture frame. "We just moved here last month," she said cheerfully. "Everyone's been so welcoming. The HOA president even stopped by to introduce herself and gave us a welcome packet. It's so nice to be in a friendly neighborhood." Rebecca smiled. "Yeah, it really is." As she watched the family walk away with their purchases, Rebecca thought about how much had changed in just a few months. One garage sale had turned into this whole thing, exposing corruption, standing up to a bully, and ultimately making the neighborhood a better place. Her husband came outside with lemonade for both of them. "Thinking about your victory over the HOA, Karen?" "Not really," Rebecca said. "Just thinking about how sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." "Especially when it's uncomfortable." "Well, I'm glad you did," he said, "though I have to say you made it look pretty easy." Rebecca laughed. "It wasn't easy. It was terrifying, actually, but it was worth it." She looked around at the neighborhood. Kids playing in yards, neighbors chatting over fences, people living their lives without fear of arbitrary rules and ridiculous fees. This was what a community was supposed to be, and all because she'd decided to have a garage sale. Rebecca raised her lemonade glass in a small private toast. To garage sales, to standing up for yourself, and to never letting bullies win, especially when they don't know who they're messing with.